Pulled the water down. It's an area left us at the party. I thought weather up.
That's probably a good idea.
No, I think you're gonna need headspace.
Yeah, I think I might save it for the holidays. Yeah, so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you everyone for coming. I'm calling to order the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority Full Authority Meeting, Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. Thank you all for joining us, and we're ahead of the snow, so we're good. I'm just gonna call on, Member Day, if you would be so kind as to, do the levy vote.
Of course, we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of the Saugeen and Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. I've been reflecting lately on the nature of meaningful consultation with First Nations communities. The more time I spend in the position of municipal councillor, the more stories I hear about how consultation has occurred in the past. It sounds like consultation has sometimes been sending information to First Nations communities and calling the task done, regardless of whether there is a response or better dialogue. At least once, it sounds like a council had the chance to meet with elders about a mutually beneficial project, but did not see the value in making time for a meeting. The project did not occur. I am pleased to see progress with what we may begin calling the territorial acknowledgement in Georgian books. A territorial acknowledgement is broader in that territory includes more than just land. It's also more specific, naming treaties 45.5, 72, 82, and 93, treaties that specifically relate to our township. These changes have been proposed after meaningful, active consultation with Saugeen Ojibwe Nation's leaders. I hope we all, in our respective townships and this conservation authority, to continue to build relationships with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. I believe that patience, flexibility, and understanding of the impact of intergenerational trauma on perceptions of government are required by all municipal leaders who would like to build stronger connections. Thank you for making time for this reflection before today's meeting.
Great, thank you very much, Tony. Appreciate that. I should have actually checked, just want to make sure that Dottie and John and Jen can hear us okay. Great, thank you for joining us online today. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward to the adoption of the agenda. And I move that the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the agenda of November 27th, 2024. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Member Mackey, for Day. Thank you. All in favor? Very, thank you. And for the approval of the minutes of the full authority minutes of October 23rd, 2024. Move that the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the full authority minutes of October 23rd, 2024. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Carlton. Member Craig. Thank you. Any comments? Seeing none. All in favor? You carried. There are no business out of the minutes at this time, so we'll move to the consent agenda. Anybody have anything that they wish to hold from today's consent agenda? Okay, not seeing anything, then I will move that in consideration of the consent agenda items listed on the November 27th, 2024 agenda. The Grace Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors receives the following items. 1, environmental planning, Section 28 permits, October 2024. 2, administration, receipts and expenses, October 2024. 3, the donation letter. 5, the Beaver River Watershed Initiative minutes, September 5th, 2024, and Friends of Haibu minutes, November 5th, 2024. 6, recent media articles. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Durst. And Member Day. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we're pleasure to announce that we have a presentation today from the Great Sauble Conservation Foundation. Mr. Stanky, do.
Well, thank you. Very efficient start to the meeting. Wow, sir.
We've got a lot to go through.
I know, I'm gonna be very quick. When I asked him to come up here, Chelsea was gonna come down and take a picture, but we didn't think you were gonna move this quickly. But it's on behalf of the Great Sauble Conservation Foundation, I'm pleased to present a check of $25,000 to the authority for the following programs that have been undertaken by your group. The Forest Festival, Rye back there, that's been working hard on that. The biomat, John back there, and $20,000 to the environmental educator, Chelsea. And on behalf of the foundation, I really encourage you to keep that program going. Want a partnership with the schools and other youth organizations, having this young lady working number one. So we are proud to present this, and we look forward to doing some more next year. We want to continue with the donation for Chelsea's position, and hopefully successful Earth Film Festival in May. We're having an excellent presentation with the movie All Too Clear. We'll be keeping you posted, and we need your support on that. So, Mr. Laffey, come on over here.
Where would you like to listen?
While you are a professional photographer, come on over here, please.
Goodness, not.
And gentleman here. So, there we go. On behalf of the foundation, thank you. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carrying on, we're going to see some new season's greetings to all of you. You guys deserve it.
Thank you very much on behalf of Great Sauble Conservation Authority. Obviously tell you how much we appreciate your ongoing support and funding. That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the business items. Start with point one, administration, the awarding of the legal counsel tender resolution attachment number 7 in your agenda package. You're going to handle this one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as the board's aware, we decided to go out to tender on our legal services. We hadn't gone out since about 2011. And so we had 2 firms representing Great Sauble since that time, Middleborough and Stevens doing the majority of the legal service work. So which for us is mostly property, real estate type work, but also any general litigation and employment law. And Garrett Pickfield out of Guelph that was handling our municipal planning and regulation pieces. More recently, we've entered into an agreement with the County of Grey to handle prosecutions on our behalf for section 28 and section 29, with the exclusion of some caveats that occur with the agreement. So based on resolution of the board, we put together a committee that consisted of myself, Chair Urig, Member Carlton, and then 2 of our staff, Vicky Roselle and Olivia Sroka. And we put out the tender for legal services. We received 11 responses. Only one of those was a local firm, that's Middleborough and Stevens. All of the others were from predominantly Toronto, Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo. So we received all of these. We met as a committee to open them and document the costs. And then we went away to review them because each proposal was different, and met again to review which firm or firms we should choose to move forward with. Following a full review, we're recommending as a committee that SV Law or Smithville Area Law out of Guelph represent us on municipal planning and regulation type law. We're recommending that Hicks Morley represent us for employment, labor, and FIPA type law. And we're recommending that Middleborough and Stevens represent us for everything else. We made this decision based on reviewing the services that each firm provided, the the experience that they had, especially experience with conservation authorities, and then the cost as well. With cost being one of the major factors, some of the firms were much thing to be able to afford. So because of proprietary information, we can't in open session release specifically what those costs are. But we can say that for each of these, they provided good value for what we were looking at, and relative to the other tenders that we received, provided the best value. It takes more being a little pricier than some of the others, but it's very rare that we need to go to employment or with the law. This sort of specializes in that explicitly, so we can felt that that was a good decision for that particular firm if that purposes. I would note that, as I said, we only got one tender proposal from a local firm. We sent the tender package directly to all relevant local firms that we could find within our watershed, but also adjacent to our watershed. So Collingwood, Southern Shores, that type of area, and still just a response. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to field any questions that the board has.
Certainly, thank you, Tim. What I'll do is I'll actually read the recommendation to, we can put it on the floor. Whereas Sauble Conservation Authority has a need to update and renew contracts for the provision of legal services, and whereas GSCA prepared and issued a request for proposals for legal services, and whereas a selection committee consisting of Chair Euring, member Carlton, CIO Lanthier, and 2 GSCA staff reviewed the responded proposals and prepared recommendations to the board of directors, that the board of directors direct staff to retain Smith Valeria Law Firm LLP for planning, municipal, and provincial offenses, related law services not covered by the GSCA Grey County Agreement, Hicks Morley for employment, labor relations, and MFIPA related law services, and Middleborough and Stevens LLP for all other law services, i.e. real estate, property, general litigation, etc. We have a mover and seconder, please. Member Mackey and Member Carlton, thank you. Any questions for CAO? Member Farmer.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm curious, the report under financial implications suggests that there are no immediate financial or budgetary implications to the changes. I'm curious at what point we would know whether the new contracts do have a budget impact beyond what we regularly budget for. And I'm also curious if your ability to answer that question might hinge on when and how we need these folks, which I imagine varies depending on the year and the situation.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Member Farmer. You did in a way answer your own question as well as I'm going to be able to. Is that these are as needed services. In a perfect world, we don't need them, but unfortunately, sometimes we do. What we have seen is the prices inevitably go up. So we did have an agreement with, for instance, Middleborough and Stevens, and that was going up by the cost of CPI annually. So they readjusted, obviously, with this opportunity. It's a little bit higher than it was previously, and I think that's absolutely fair. We're obviously coming forward. We saw the same thing with our other firms. So when we use these firms, it will cost a little bit more than it has in the past, but it's impossible for me to put a number on it because it depends what we're using for and for how long. What I can say is that of the firms we've selected, they have a lot of opportunity with members of their team who are not, say, partners, who would be associate lawyers that cost a little bit less, and that is something that we weighed in as well. So something we would try to take advantage of in any situation is if it does not have to be a senior partner, that an associate would do a little bit to keep our costs as low as possible.
Okay. Thank you, John. Any other questions? No. Seeing no other questions, then I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Member Shaw, is that a late question or are you?
I was just voting.
I'll
My internet's a little unstable, so I'm just gonna stay off camera.
Sure. Thank you. So business items, administration, point B, the watershed-based resource management strategy final resolution, attachment number 8 in your package. And again, I'll pass over to you, Tim.
Thank you. So this is a report that came forward to the board last month to discuss the watershed-based resource management strategy that we're required under the Conservation Authorities Act. As I mentioned last month, it amounted to more of a gap analysis of programs and services we provided and what it would cost to bring those programs up to what we believe internally at the staff level would be 100% program delivery. As noted last month, this is not a suggestion that is the intent, but rather the legislation requires that we identify those barriers and shortfalls, and then identify a cost and a resource. So that's what we've done. We put this out for consultation that consisted of sending it directly to all municipal folks to share with the municipal councils, as well as sending it to Sauble Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and then posting it on our website and sending out a notification via social media. We received 3 responses to the survey that we put out. And the responses to that survey are included in the staff report. There's nothing consequential to report. So the final strategy, the final version of the strategy remains generally identical to the last iteration, the difference being we've included an executive summary this time around. So at this point, we're looking forward to approve the strategy. This is something that we're again, future see changed. There's further consultation and feedback.
Thank you, gentlemen. Another overwhelming survey response. So I'll put on the floor of the motion so that we can discuss if wanted. Whereas Ontario Regulation 686-21, mandatory programs and services regulation requires conservation authorities to develop and implement a watershed-based resource management strategy on or before December 31st, 2024. And whereas GSEA is developing and consulted on such a strategy, that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors endorsed the GSEA watershed-based resource and strategy. We have a mover and a seconder, please. And member Farmer and member Dimmick, thank you. Any comments or questions? Member Hurst.
Oh, yes, thank you. So into next year and the year after budgets, will we be seeing components of this plan in the budget? And so will they be identified, or will be setting aside a certain percentage of the budget directed to this over the next years?
You're at face value.
No?
So what will happen is inevitably through our strategic plan, we
Right.
identify needs for the organization, and the board would weigh in on those. What this is going to do is dovetail nicely into that to show us if we make that change, we now already know what we would expect that to cost. And so the board can make a more educated decision on the strategic plan as to any changes that we want to make.
Oh, so this doesn't stand alone, it gets incorporated into general operation vis-a-vis the strategy.
It provides a background tool.
Any other questions? Rebecca.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm through to Tim. Are there any potential liabilities outlining all these shortcomings? Not addressing.
Yes. Yeah, I believe there could be, the most prominent one that I can think of is where there's a potential safety liability that's identified in the strategy. It's identified to address that. We'll have to come forward in the next 2 years planning to address ash. Is we put in an option into this report. It doesn't mean it's going to be the option, but I think as we that's something to be consider seriously and
Anyone else? Seeing nothing, thank you very much. I will call for the vote, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to, business items administration, point C, personnel policy, bereavement policy. Board resolution attachment number 9 in your agenda package, and Alan, leave it to you.
Just as a refresher, we're back again on the personnel policy. This is, I think, the third time that you've seen me handle this document. So, what we've come to at this point is that the majority of the policy has been approved, with the idea that we need to address the. So today, forward with 2 options for wording for this part of the policy. The only difference in the wording between option 1 and option 2 is the portion that's been highlighted in the yellow. It's for non-related individuals fulfilling the role of an immediate family. So.
Thank you, Allison. Rather than read this twice, I'm going to open this up to the floor so we can determine whether we want to proceed with 1 or 2. So questions for Allison? Member Farmer.
I was hoping to take the opportunity to move option 2.
So I have a seconder for, thank you, Member Carl. Any other questions or comments? Member Gray.
I would just ask, the mover seconder, are there any municipalities, that you've referred to in terms of, guiding you in the decision, to advance option 2? Because, human resource professionals I've spoken to, haven't guided my decision in that direction. So I'm just wondering, what's the decision-making process? What's formulating the decision?
Through the chair, I haven't checked with human resources professionals. I am moving this motion from the perspective of inclusion, knowing that within even just my own circle of friends, that I have folks who have constellations of social and support connections that do not include close ties to family members, but that in the popular language do include chosen family, and that although they do not share DNA, they are the type of relationship that is close, that is supportive, and that were one of those people to die, they would not be able to fulfill their functions while tending to the both personal and logistical requirements of following up when somebody dies, for all the reasons that are already laid out there. I think that often if we have that there are 2 kind of problematic ways, or that we could have this conversation. If we could say, well, no one else is doing it, why would we do it? Then that leaves us as a board as only being followers and not being able to reflect individually on what best practice would be. But I also think that from the perspective of wanting to be an employer that is inclusive and that recognizes that not everyone is lucky enough to have close and supportive relationships with people with whom they share DNA, that doesn't mean that you're not impacted by, well, first, it doesn't mean that you're socially isolated. It also doesn't mean that you're not impacted by the loss of those people who are part of your daily and familiar support systems. So I don't want to make assumptions about the identities and constellations of social and family supports of employees of the GSCA. I do want to make sure that as a board, we're creating policies that recognize that not everyone fits into the same little box, and that recognizes that employees need support regardless of what that looks like. Hope that answers the question through the chair.
Member Day.
I hesitated about saying this, but I spoke to the chair and reflected on the fact that what I about say could be relevant to regarding exclusionary interest for the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority, just as it is for the Township of Georgian Bluffs. When we consider hiring an engineering firm in the Township of Georgian Bluffs, the Integrity Commission deemed that I have a familiar relationship with family. I am neither related to them by DNA nor by marriage, but the tasks we do together and actions we perform for each other were deemed by the Integrity Commissioner to be of a familial nature. And therefore, I would not be it would be good for me to step away from those conversations so that any perception of bias about hiring them would not impact the township the way we. So I feel like the Integrity Commissioner's voice is one I wanted to bring into this conversation only because we have that opportunity. I'm not bringing this forward because I brought this topic forward to benefit myself in any way. I know that there are many folks out there like me who have a different support within society, and they're not always reflected in
I would also agree with what both Member Day and Member Farmer have said. Family is no longer mom, dad, brothers, sisters. Family has expanded beyond that. And I think if we want to be inclusive of everyone, we need to show leadership and move forward in this direction.
Thank you for that. I can do that.
I just wanted to follow up on what the counselor, remember, I spoke to 3 different HR professionals, larger organizations, and they expressed caution in how open-ended the wording was in our policies. For one, even in option 1, other relatives, that opens the door up. You're not specifying what relative it is. And distant cousins come in for it. All they have to be is a relative. If someone needs time off to mend from a grieving experience, you want that to take place. However, the taxpayer needs to know that the parameters. HR professionals are saying you need to have parameters. We don't have parameters according in really either one. Every other bereavement policy I've read has very clear parameters. And I think
Member Dubick. You're muted.
Thank you, Chair. So while our municipalities may not include this language in our own policies, we have seen examples out of province. This would make us more, sort of on the forefront, maybe of policy, and with the lens of inclusivity. I think it is appropriate to include this wording. And I would think, and maybe if our CEO maybe can confirm that, if there ever is a feeling of abuse of any policy, that would be brought back to the board. And maybe if you could just comment on that. Thank you.
Yes, through the chair. Yeah, absolutely. That would be the intent. And so what we tried to do with this particular policy, these 2 options, is to state that any deviation from the policy would be also brought to the board. So that if there was something that we can't foresee sitting here today, or something that has more or less potential to be abused, that can be considered on a case-by-case basis and brought back to the board for a decision on that. But certainly, if it were to be abused, it would either be dealt with, at an operating level or brought to.
Anyone else?
How would one define abuse? Like, in my mind, that would be overuse of that for basically is what we're talking about. Within my own circumstances, in the last just under 4 years, I've lost my husband, both parents and both in-laws, plus a nephew. That would be at least 6 that would fit within the parameter and not be defined as abuse. But another person might lose the person who has been like a mother or been like a father, and they wouldn't be allowed that same, if we were to go without that piece in there, they wouldn't have that same privilege of having the ability to take that time off. And I think that's where we start to breed a division that shouldn't be there.
Thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate the CEO's comments around this can also be dealt with at an operational level. If we're worried that there are staff at the Conservation Authority who will take opportunities to not do their work and will be dishonest to do that, I don't think that this policy is the only place in which someone would look for a loophole. I think that if we assume that most people want to do good work, most people are honest, and we want to create policies that would apply for people regardless of the circumstances of, like, appropriately, regardless of whether the circumstances of their life follow nuclear leave it to beaver models, then we should pass this. If the issue that we're trying to protect against is people taking advantage, that's a separate issue of staffing and performance and the culture of an employee within an organization. And I don't think that closing off inclusive options or opportunities to be, as Member Dubik said, on like leaders in this kind of way, I don't think that should stop us because we're afraid that someone's going to try to take advantage. If they're going to take advantage, that's a separate problem, and there are HR policies and performance appraisals to address that.
Member Gregg.
I would just say it's incorporating subjectivity into the managerial role that I'm not comfortable with. And I think we've skinned this pretty good, so I will move a motion to please call.
So be it. Certainly. Okay, Member Dave.
Just to
Oh,
double
you
check.
should go.
Let Valerie do her.
Yeah, you do it.
Okay. Recognizing that member Bell is absent, member Carlton,
4.
member Day.
We're voting for option 2. That's not good.
That is the motion, yes. The motion is currently, option 2 for inclusion.
I just wanted to make sure. 4.
Member Dubik,
4.
member Durst,
4.
member Gregg,
Opposed?
member Farmer,
In favor.
member Mackey,
Opposed?
member Maxwell,
Nay.
member Shaw,
4.
and Chair Rick.
4.
That is 7-4 and 3 opposed.
Actually.
You did actually.
Did I? No, I didn't actually, because
Well,
I said I
you
went
did
straight.
get a mover and a.
I did because
Sorry.
John actually went option 2. I think I'll just read
Okay,
with
yep.
the actual 2 in, because I was
Okay.
debating whether it was gonna go one way or the other.
Fair.
So the motion was, whereas the GFCA Board of Directors approved a new personnel policy for the GFCA, save and accept the bereavement policy section. And whereas staff have prepared 2 options for the wording of this policy based on discussion with the board, that the GFCA Board of Directors endorses bereavement policy option 2 for inclusion in the personnel policy. And that was it. Moving Moving on, administration point 1.D, the budget update information. Allison, if you're seated there already?
Yes. Well, there is a fairly lengthy report with the. And so I don't really have a lot to say. I was just going to point out that it is, we're showing a small surplus at the end of the third quarter. Given that our revenues are a little off the mark in our environmental planning department. And given that our parking revenues are over the mark, we're still thinking that we're probably going to come with a small deficit at the end of the year. Around 4,000. We've certainly done everything we can to mitigate that, and I think there's still a possibility that we may end up ahead of our goal. Yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Allison, and I will table that. Whereas the board of directors approved the GSDA 2024 operating and capital budget on December 19th, 2023 by motion FA-23-122, that the board of directors received staff report 043-2024 Q3 budget report back as information. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Durst, then Member Gray. Any questions, comments for us? Member Gray.
The last comment you made was potential opportunities that might mitigate the position that you're in. Can you expand on what some of those opportunities for departments or movements could be?
Well, we did have one temporary position there. It's a contract position. And it's current. It's not a lot of. It's not a lot of difference, but it is one thing we could do the same, but you know. Just trying to get as many of those revenue items that we can. To recognize revenue.
I think CEO, FDA had something to add to that.
As Allison had noted, the deficit is driven by anticipated revenues in our planning department for 2024. So we took action in 2023, realized that we weren't realizing that the expectations from the Watson report. Fortunately, through 2024, we're still not realizing, as I've discussed with each of your councils as well, taking further action. Further address that. There's limited action that we can take in here at this point to address that issue. So when we talk about whether there's an opportunity that would be better at the end of the year than anticipating now, what we're saying is there's still a chance that either invoiced and money's owing in time, or that additional revenues generally in that department. But even with those, we still expect a deficit in that area. Like I said, there are reasonable or practical actions that we can take to address that. There are opportunities that we can reallocate through the budget by the end of the year to address that, or year.
Member Gray.
The only question I would ask to that then is, even if those monies don't come in the door at the end of the year, they just sit in the books as accounts receivables. They don't have a budgetary impact.
Yeah, money that it has been earned. There are some bigger projects that are work in progress, so we would recognize all of the revenue from those projects until.
Any other questions for Allison or Tim on the budget? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. you know, good news story, I hope, Allison. So Q3 portfolio update.
So our money that's invested with TD is doing very well for us. We've got quite an increase from the second quarter to the third quarter. We're up $45,000 from the end of the third quarter to today. Just check. So over the year, from the third quarter, we are up about 10.1% and 3.86% for quarters. Yeah, the markets have rebounded nicely.
Not going to comment on any other US countries that might impact that down the road. Any comments or questions for Allison? Sorry, that was great.
We almost had this discussion fall of 21. Our book value was very high because the market was really good. The market cannot go up in perpetuity like it has in the last 5-6 months. Should we discussion about tucking in some of those gains and protecting them, whereas 3 years ago we didn't, and they went the direction that most of people's portfolios went for a period of time.
Coincidentally, we happen to have a motion that is not on your agenda that we thought would fit in here. It will address exactly to that regard. So that's very apt and appropriate. So I think what I'd like to do is, if there's no other questions regarding Allison's presentation, I would just make a motion that the board of directors receive the GSCA 2024 third quarter portfolio update as information. Then we'll move on to the motion regarding that. Can I have a mover and a second for that, please? Carl? Greg, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, Allison. So I'll turn it over to Tim to discuss that exact proposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that was an excellent segue for Greg. So I'm hoping that, yeah, exactly what you said. So what we've seen is over the last 12 months, we've seen a 19% increase in our portfolio. But then over the year to date, 10.4, the last quarter we're 3.86. So certainly we're still on the black side of the trend, but it's clear that it's slowing down. And Allison and I recognize some serious concerns with potential impacts to the market, not just in general, but because of the political situation that's going to occur in the US come January, and what impact that may have specifically on Canadian equities, but possibly overall. So I would like to request that a member of or tables a motion that we've drafted here as whereas GSCA foresees the short-term need to draw on reserve funds to invest in innovation at the GSCA Admin Center, that GSCA Board of Directors directs staff to move $500,000 from GSCA's investment portfolio into GSCA's high interest savings account. So by doing this, I feel that will shelter that $500,000 based on the revenue that we've earned now. It still leaves about $1.2 million in our, well, I guess we have $500,000 in the high interest savings. But that way it'll still be earning money on savings until we need it, but it will be sheltered from any downturn in the market that could occur.
So there is a motion in there that's on the table. Let's put that, or at least that was proposed. So let's get a, can I have a mover and second for that? So that we can put up the table and discuss it.
I'm wondering if you take
Do we get a mover and second, or get it on the floor first, and then we move into that? Yes. Jen, you.
Yeah, I'll
moving
move that.
Thank you. Second, please, Member Gray. Thank you. Discussion and Raki?
I remember the discussion we had a few years ago. And when I look at the since inception returns have been 4.34%. And we could lock in now, probably roughly at the same rate. Why would we take any chance? So I think we should. Safety needs to be paramount for protecting these funds. This is an opportunity to do it. Still, I don't think.
So we did discuss that option too, and if we move it so that we have less than $1 million in our portfolio and GICs and bonds, we may not be able to get for management of that fund any longer. So I think maybe 600,000 remainder in that fund to continue to give that management. Alternately, could, it's possible if that's the board's direction. I imagine anything going to GSCs will can't move that until two. But yeah. So Allison and I set up a meeting with our speak in anticipation. Since today. Discussion. Rebecca?
You could alleviate, I think it's 1% that we're paying our advisor right now. You could alleviate that 1% if you some GICs, but we know real management required. So most funds you are able to get rid of that 1% management. So just prove the thought. We don't have to be spending 1%.
Any other questions or comments? So, sorry.
Okay, I would tend to agree with member Hunt. Getting it, not paying that 1% fee and having it securely, knowing exactly what we're getting for income off of it, makes sense.
So I'm hearing that there is a desire to have a higher amount, which is a negative benefit to a specific amount.
Let me just add something there. As long as we can access it totally as we need to out of that high interest savings account. Doesn't lock in for a period of time, it's just in that account.
We're getting so much more.
Yeah. We're not locking in for a period of time, it's just there.
So we're still open for an amendment, but what is the amount? Member Wagner?
I would transfer our entire portfolio. Safe, sensible. 1% insured.
Might I suggest that, we have to the board wait until we get the advice of our financial manager on these two options. There might be something that they would suggest that we might be walking into something that none of us are aware of. And that we take both of the suggestions through the CAO to the financial advisor and hear what they might have to say. Although I'm pretty sure they might say, well, we'd rather take your 1%, but there could be something that we aren't aware of that might make our decision easier.
Member Parker first, and then we can.
Thank you. Where those of us online are at a bit of a disadvantage, as comments from outside of the immediate circle are hard or impossible to hear. I don't feel personally like super comfortable making a decision like that without kind of seeing some sort of comparison with numbers for what amounts or ratios we're considering and how the relative returns are on that. I'm the kind of person that might need to see some numbers and compare that rather than make an immediate decision just on the fly of a conversation like this. I'm curious, do we need to make this decision right now? And are the differences between what Member Mackey's suggesting and what Tim had suggested, like how great are those? Is it possible to take a part step and then a subsequent step when we do, as Member Dirsch said, have more information and more detailed information? Like what is the urgency and what are our timelines for these various options?
Tim's going to comment, and I'm sure it's going to be the fact that we're not having a board meeting in December, and January is the turn of presidency in the US, which is going to definitely impact economic everywhere. I'm sure that that's part of the conversation, but Ed.
I think that nails it on the head. The idea with the 500,000 for sure is that that's money that we expect to need in the short term. And I hate to see a loss on that when we've just seen such good gains. I do anticipate a turn in the market in January. I don't know which way that's going to turn, and depending on which equities they are. But at the risk of it being a downward turn, I think we'd be prudent to hold some of that right now. As for the remainder of that, I agree with Member Dirsch that it would be wise of us to talk to our financial advisor, see what they say, but the risk there obviously is that we don't meet again until the end of January, at which time the board would get that advice.
Renee, you were first.
Thank you. I feel like my comments have mainly been stated. I just feel uncomfortable making such a big decision with so little information. I think it's both time and information, time to process the idea and information to feel like I am making a reasonable choice as someone who doesn't have over $1 million. I don't know how we can build in time to get more information, but I feel like for me, that would be a beneficial measure for me.
Thank you, Member Gregor, you and Grant as well.
I think the board should move on the motion today for $500,000. It's with regret that we didn't move forward a couple of years ago and lock in some of those dollars. We had money sitting in high interest savings account. I can't remember if we moved like 300, 400,000 over a few years ago into the investment portfolio from the bank account. The Conservation Authority is going to last far beyond any of us seated here today. And really what we are doing is just responding to a potential gain by moving quickly now and still leaving a secure asset in there that is broken down into many different components. I mean, the financial advisor is an intelligent individual, and he is protecting the assets here by currency exchange, and you can hedge it in a myriad of different ways. And we got different equities in different countries and so forth. So let's still have faith that it is going to be protected. In terms of your gross amount, you're going to be that 500,000. So you're 1.2 million maybe after your actions, and that's about $12,000 is your 1% commission fee on that. So that's what's at risk, but you're playing that against the professional advice that you're getting from your advisor. So I think the prudent move is to secure the gains at this time. And yeah, who knows where the market's still going to go. The market likes security, and they've got security. These in one country, not maybe here. So that's, I think, the right decision. Absolutely, if you're going to move everything, I think you want the advice of your advisor to contribute to that decision. But this is movement that I don't think we need further insights and advice on. Regretfully, we didn't do it a few years ago to protect some of those gains.
I forgot my second point, that I think moving 500,000 to protect the money for building this as we move forward. That is a good suggestion.
Okay, so what we have on the table now is a potential amendment. So we either vote, excuse me, either vote on that, or if you wanted to stand and we're back in.
All I want to say, Mr. Chair, is that the investment advisor is a salesman. And I'll leave it at that.
Are you withdrawing your amendment?
It sounds like the majority want to transfer 500, and I certainly believe what we're taking a risk on about 70% of the portfolio. So 1.2 million, market goes down 15%. You're putting at risk about $180,000. That's the risk that's on the table.
Member Maxwell.
Well, the one thing I wanted to make was a comment. And it's to Member Mackey's. Normally in uncertain times, money moves, takes a flight to safety. It's usually the prudent course of action. But I will just leave it at that. That's my comment.
Okay, Member Gerber.
So if we stayed with just moving the 500,000, but Kim, you and Allison are having a meeting on Friday with had that question in the past about kind of the safety of the rest of those funds. And we do have somewhat of a meeting in December, do we not, at the luncheon thing? No, but we could at that point call a quick meeting to discuss.
That's very good.
That we would be meeting then, so if necessary, we could discuss that at that point. On your forum.
Yeah, as we already told you before, I agree. I think that's a certainly good idea, because we do have the vehicle to do it. And we will hopefully then have information to make an educated decision. So go ahead.
Given the time frame, because that's next Thursday, it's just a week and a day from now. We will need a decision. We would need a decision on that specifically today, because we have notice requirements in our administrative bylaws as well as the rate. So we can, yes, the chair has the discretion to call the meeting. But the chair sees fit, and the board will mostly gathered at that time, just as staff, as soon as possible, so that we can take the appropriate actions.
Yeah, that's a quick turnaround, it's only a week, which is, but I know, I was thinking it was, but Valerie brought that up earlier. Vice Chair Duvick.
Thank you. So just a question to our CEO. So in terms of the 500,000, is that, how did you come to that number? Is that adequate, or should we be pulling more? Maybe if you can just give us a bit of sense of how you came up with the 500.
Sure. We're looking to draw ultimately about 875,000 from our reserves for the building project. We do have money in a separate account right now, but the 500,000 was arrived at, as I mentioned earlier, of that 1.7 in our portfolio right now, 100,000 of that is currently in the high interest savings account. So there's 1.6 million roughly invested. And so the decision, it could have been 600,000 if we chose 500,000 as an amount to move, without wanting to move it below that $1 million threshold that we believe, or with Mike and on Friday, we believe would impact our ability to have the fund managed the way it is right now.
Anyone else have any other questions? Okay. So you're meeting on Friday. Just the whole vulnerability is the question that obviously most people have concern with. Do you feel that there's adequate time? We would call just a very quick meeting prior to the luncheon to have a conversation based on your conversation that would happen this Friday. There's no problem calling a meeting for that day if we think there's value in it. I do get the impression from the room concern, obviously, about a larger amount. And I think it would definitely alleviate a lot of people's concerns if we had at least an expert opinion. If I'm reading that correctly, then I would think let's do that, let's call that a meeting just prior to the luncheon, so that we can have a professional opinion and we can make a motion on at that point.
So unfortunately, I can't answer that question because I don't know what we're going to hear from the financial advisor on Friday. If he can say definitively yes or no on something, then we can certainly have a board report prepared and issued in time for that meeting. But if he needs any time at all to look into that and get back to us, we will.
So we could have the meeting called as a tentative meeting. It's easier to cancel a meeting than it is to call. So if we find that after Friday, no, we can't have that information, well, then we cancel that meeting. But if we can set ourselves up properly.
So, that's two things again. So we have the motion on the table to go as it is with $500,000, which I feel that we're kind of in agreement that we want to at least protect X and whether we get to Y or not. Sorry, Vice Chair, it looks like whether you still have your hand up or another question. No? Okay. So based on that, we have a mover and a seconder. I would recommend, I would call for a vote to determine whether we move forward with that. All in favor? So that carries as is. However, the caveat is, let's call a meeting prior to the luncheon of December 5th to discuss the potentiality of adding more funds based on professional opinion that we will hopefully seek on Friday. Okay.
On a practical note, what time is the luncheon? And what time would that, just approximately, I don't know that I can attend.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because I know we do have some members who, yeah, some members will be beginning of the meeting, maybe further than the enter and towards the meeting, because I think we have some people who can be there early.
Okay.
So we have the luncheon is currently slated to start. Arrival time is 11:30, so there's a social hour or a social half hour between 11:30 and 12. Lunch is for noon, and then there's presentations and speaking afterwards. So the end of the meeting, you may be able to capture more, so that those who can't maybe attend for lunch may still be able to slide in. And we do have the availability of having virtual there as well.
That was my question, whether or not if we do stipulate the time, whether people could at least come in just for the vote for that portion.
So there's TV and internet access that we can.
Okay, so we
It's
can.
the same place as last year.
Go ahead.
So we can provide all the logistics and we'll see what works.
All right. Moving on. Next is the 2025 draft budget, attachment 12 in your agenda packages, and I'm going to turn that one over to Tim as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you're all aware, I've been out to talk to all of your solicitors at this point, except for that great highlights we have scheduled for mid-December. But otherwise, I've been out to all of your councils now to discuss both the draft 2025 budget as approved for circulation by the board at the last meeting and the proposed renovations to our administration center. In the board package, I'm not proposing to go through it in detail, but I think I've provided you all the detail that hopefully there's a couple of things I want to highlight. So one is the budget that we're bringing forward at this meeting as the draft 2025 budget is largely the same as the last iteration. The levy ask within that operating budget has not changed since the October iteration of that budget. What has changed is we've incorporated the information center into that based on comments from the board at our last meeting. Staff sought direction from the board as to how to move forward. So we have talked to your senior staff about this, both items. We've talked to councils about this. One comment that we did receive from the board at a previous meeting was why the 15-year amortization versus a different amortization period. So we put some information in the staff report that highlights a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, and 25-year amortization period. We've hypothetically used a 4.2% interest rate on that, and that's based on discussions with lenders that we've had to date. Obviously, Infrastructure Ontario, as you'd be familiar, offers better rates than the big five banks. And so we've set a rate that is at the low end of what the banks are saying and high end of what Infrastructure Ontario is saying, so that until we know where we land, because there's pros and cons to both types of institutions. What you can see is based on this at a staff level, still recommending a 15-year amortization. And the reason for that is that based on discussions we've had last year and then again this year with your senior staff, is that we were provided with numbers that, although any increase is not super favorable, it's a reasonable or manageable increase. And then we also tried to get an upside limit from them as well. This 15-year amortization generally keeps it below the acceptable limit. There were one or two municipalities that, one municipality that said any increase was too much of an increase, and one of our municipalities that said just bring it forward. See, but that being said, so 10 years would make that payment, that annual payment too steep based on the discussions that we had with municipal staff. In my personal opinion, or my professional opinion, extending it beyond the 15 years is spending too much money on the cost of borrowing. So in those tables within the board report that are largely shaded blue, you can see for each of your municipalities what the annual cost would be, what the total cost after 15 years would be, what the total borrowing cost to you would be. So that borrowing cost, interest on top of everything. So if we chose 25 years instead of 15 years to reduce that annual impact, we would almost double the cost. And so you can see, depending on your municipality and the percentage of the total paid based on modified current value assessment, that impact can be significant versus others. So that's one side. That's how we came to the decision on cost that we came to based on the cost estimate and how to pay that back. As I said, we met with each of your municipal councils and we received feedback at the time. The feedback was variable. So some of it was very positive and some of it was less positive. I tried to address the comments that we received in here. Some of the comments related to make more money. Yes, we'd like to make more money. I feel that we've driven revenues up substantially in the last 5 years. There is a limit to how much revenue we can drive. Some of the comments were about disposing of property to fund. I think it's very, very important, especially as a conservation authority, the tasks that we can give to protect properties, that if the board is making decisions on divestment of properties, that is being done independent of a financial. I think it'd be wise and prudent for the board to say, if we're going to divest the property, we're going to divest it for other reasons, not because something. But then that money could be earmarked on something. Otherwise, I feel it's a slippery slope that we're heading down at any time. We have huge funding that we're looking to liquidate. It should be one other comment that was quite a valid comment that we received at the Township of Jordan Bluffs was to look into the cost of leasing long-term instead of doing the renovation. So what we know is that our building right now is about 10,000 square. If we suggest that we would go down to 8,000 or 9,000 square feet for the staff amount that we have, what we're seeing in the market right now is a lease rate of about $30 a square foot per year. So that puts the value of the cost of leasing at $250,000 for the cost of doing the project. Borrowing is $180,000. So the cost of leasing is substantially more. And from what we've seen, there does not appear to be a building that you walk into and it's ready to laptop and go. So there's investment that has to go into whatever space is going to be leased to make it suitable. And we still have this building. We still have to do something with this building. So based on that course analysis, out to the board. So, I mean, a very high level, that's the budget. It's a bit of a complicated budget this year because it obviously includes very unusual capital expense. But I think the best course of action right now is to chair is to field any questions or discussion.
Thank you for the information, Tim. I will table the motion. Whereas GSCA Board of Directors received and directed staff to circulate the 2025 draft budget, and whereas staff have circulated the budget and presented the same to municipal partners, and whereas staff have prepared a revised budget that includes the capital cost of the administration center renovation, that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors received the revised 2025 draft budget, and that staff be directed to distribute the revised 2025 draft budget and revised budget companion to participating municipalities for the minimum 30-day review period. And that staff bring a report before the Board of Directors at the January 2025 meeting of the board for final review and approval of the 2025 budget. Mover second, please. Member Carlton. And Member Mackey. Questions or comments, please? Member Day.
Thank you. I appreciate your response to the questions from the Georgian Bluffs Council. I just had two follow-up questions in that regard. If leasing in the long run requires updates to spaces, what does that look like in the short run? Just time when the building is being renovated.
That's a good question. So essentially where we've landed in the short term is to tolerate it for a year. So we're going with a much smaller space, about 3,800 square feet. That this doesn't facilitate much in the way of meeting places. It doesn't facilitate much in the way of serving the public when they come in. Those facilities will still be there, and staff will be tight together. It's certainly not a long-term solution. So when we look to a long-term solution, we have to look to what is an adequate space to serve the function of the conservation authority. That's where we come. So we took a number that's smaller than this space, but still sufficient to.
Member Maxwell.
Well, I'll just build on a comment that came from our council table. And I don't know if there's any possibilities with this. One council member, it was Deputy Mayor, said you couldn't have picked a worse time to build a building. Come to our council. Is there any way that didn't see any resistance to the upgrade, but when you threw in the new building or renovation or addition or whatever we're going to call it, it seemed to just, for the budget that we have right now, 18.9% we're wrestling with, it's going to be difficult to sell at the council table. I think a lot of council tables, maybe I'm maybe speaking out of turn on that, I don't know, maybe. But this seems to be, is there any penalty to maybe postponing this other than just doing the roof and what we were talking about earlier?
So, yeah, you're right. That question was asked at your council, and my answer at the time, I think it's still relevant, is that yes, we continue to put Band-Aids on the problem, but it's not It's not gonna make the item go away. So eventually we have to deal with it. I don't think there's ever a time where I'm gonna take this to municipal council. They're gonna say, this is great. Here, I'm not trying to be facetious either. But the reality is it's never not a tight budget year, really. And this work does need to be done, and respectfully, the board is pushing this project along to the point where we're at 50% sure. So if the board is not supportive of this project, the board needs to plug up this, as opposed to saying it's not the right time to bring it to school councils.
Only follow-up I have is that I do know at our council that we have run out of the ability to generate revenue. I do believe that. It's just the way the market's tough. Turn down the building and everything else. Like we're scraping the barrel right now, looking at things like mat tax and different things, parking. So the real money is gone off the table. So we're looking at savings right now. But, you know, I was just say that's what we have to do is start cutting costs everywhere we can in order to bring it down. So I just want to let everybody aware of where our position is on that, from the council table, our council table. And it's, I mean, in fact, the conservation as much as they can, but when it comes down to it, they're gonna go down to the local taxpayer as well. So that's gonna be difficult in our council. I don't know where we go with this. We would like to see the building done. And the deputy mayor said we're gonna pick the worst time to even think about this. And our council.
I'm not gonna defend either way, but I think the one thing we left out was kicking it down the road is because construction costs go down every year. Oh, wait, that's not true. So that's the other problem. Pushing it forward is that there's a possibility it's gonna be more expensive in years to come. We hope. I think Tobin, you were first, if you still had a question. If not,
I
go to-
do have another leasing related question and a question that came from the council after our last meeting. Okay. My question about leasing, just to fully understand the scenario, if we were to move to a long-term leasing scenario, what impact would that have on the education and work programs and the overall culture of
Yeah, so that's an excellent question too, that I didn't get into the details of in this discussion right now. So in addition to the fact that there are obvious costs to moving, to relocating our staff to another location and paying a lease rate plus investing in infrastructure there, is we still have this building here that we need to do something with. So if we were to say, like, go to the extreme end and say, we're gonna bulldoze this building to the ground, it's gonna be a field, well, then I really don't know what we would do with our education program, because depending on where we're leasing, it's unlikely to be a space where we can also operate our day camp program, or something like that. We have other infrastructure here. So we have our shop to the south of this building right now. We have a storage building behind that. This is where our fleet is maintained and so on. So there are those factors as well. So that's why I say when we look at leasing, there's the face value cost, which right off the hop is higher than the cost of rent. But there are a lot of other cost considerations.
And a track of, I don't know if you're gonna have a number to answer this question, but the question was raised, like how many members of the public do visit our building? And I have a bit of a spin on that question as well, because I believe it during one of our board meetings, some people walked in looking for a bathroom one day. So how many more people will be able to visit the building after the renovation? I assuming. So how many people are currently visiting the building to ask planning questions? Maybe meetings or.
I don't know for sure, Valerie, so that, but I would think 5 to 10 per day.
Give or take. And do you think that would go up with the renovation in a significant way, beneficial to the public?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so part of that renovation, in addition to making the building more accessible and providing better customer service to the people who are coming here for things like that, We would also have because we do have 7.5 kilometers of trail here, we have a very popular tourist destination, Sauble. We don't wish to encourage further promotion of that. That people would come in for that, but also using that lobby area, which is essentially where we're sitting today, to facilitate teaching people about what it does. So having displays and information, because people typically know about one facet, whether that's we own land or they get a permit from us or we plant trees. This would give an opportunity for people come in the door to better understand the organization.
Might I try your patience with one more question? I vaguely remember from a past meeting that maybe we talked about rental space in the evening as a possibility as well as another revenue source once the building is fixed for, a place that I worked in Toronto, we hosted weddings and that was a large source of revenue once we had an indoor speaker. So I don't know if that's a possibility within renovations.
Yeah, maybe not weddings, but certainly the use of the space. So the way it's being defined is essentially where those poles are on. I apologize for the members online, but hopefully you'll remember the boardroom. Where those poles are, that those would be the outer walls. So there would be office space on either side of that. The board meeting, or the boardroom rather, meeting room would be on the back side of this wall, which is the fireplace. And so the office is being designed in such a way that those staff office areas can be closed to block, and somebody could rent the space that includes the boardroom lobby area. So what that looks like in the future, is it just to partner organizations and stakeholders, or is it open for the general public? We don't surround that, but we've designed the building in such a way that it could facilitate some. I don't think it'll be to the level of St. Magnus.
That's all.
Member first.
Just quickly, goes to, member days, questions around alternate and increased use. We all know that we're building a new town hall. And one of the best conversations that council got into with the architect was for our council chambers, actually council meetings are going to be the least important use of our new council chamber. It's program space first, public program space, council chamber, second or third at the moment, because we only use it every 2 weeks and for established committee meetings. So many of our conversations are around who cannot use our city hall or town hall at the moment, which is just about anybody, just about anybody. You have to be pretty physically fit to be able to go on both floors of our town hall right now. So that was 2 components of our conversation is how to best maximize every single, area of our town hall. And who do we service that we cannot service now? And those were trigger points for us. And I look at this building the same way. How can we maximize every square foot of the space that we can? And who can we service now? Who can we service with a new building that we cannot service now? And I think I know it doesn't have, Member Maxwell's concern around not being affordable all the time. It's a municipality, but overall it's an institution. And it's a public institution that we have to maximize use for the public. And there's really no way around that other than what staff has presented us, which is a renovated building. Which, having been on the building committee for only just a short time, and having been, having to build large projects throughout my career, I can say that this had as much due diligence on the cost as I've seen any institutional project that I've been involved in. And although it was not a hard sell at my council, it was a sell. And they used the experience of having to build a new town hall as sort of a backdrop to the conversations around this building.
I know you've been trying to upload these to us right forward.
I did, a couple comments. I think there was a worse time to construct the building. It would have been 2 years ago. We would have paid probably $375 a square foot as opposed to where we're at today, where it's, you can do 225, $250 per square foot on construction-based costs. I know that 3.5 years ago, I noted, accepting the chair's position, that we need to advance forward on building admin renovations, and it needs to be a priority in here. It's never going to be an optimal time. But, we've got so convinced that money is cheap in society, that we have a 4.2% borrowing rate. That's not the end of the world. There's lots of people alive who can remember hellacious rates. Anything north of 9-10 is tremendously scary in terms of ever thinking, how are you going to get ahead? So we were in a position 2 years ago, we advanced the position, we might have been at $4 million construction costs plus financing. This staff have done a good job, worked hard. This has been multi-year trying to get to where we're at. It's $2.7 million estimate, but it's better than what it could have been. We need to do it. There's hardly been any revenues put into the building. The higher level of governments are reluctant to finance the properties, and they should be. It was built years ago, and we decide as a society to just throw checks to everybody in the mail instead of reinvesting in the properties that we created to serve societal needs. My only question is here, no problems with the 15%. Chart column 2, the approximate annual cost is not inclusive of the borrowing cost. Was that by intent that we're excluding the borrowing cost from the math here, just leaving it secondary? Because it looks on the surface that that is just a base principal cost divided by 15 years. Sorry, where? Oh, so this is on page 4. So there's the 10-year, 15-year, the amortization tables. Yes. But it just looks like it's the principal extended out and not inclusive of the interest.
No, that is, it's inclusive of the interest, but exclusive of the money that Great Sauble is pulling from reserves to put towards the project.
Okay, so that's,
So it brings it down to a $2 million borrow. And then the payback is 2.7 in a 15-year scenario, $700,000 in interest.
okay. I'm supportive of the direction of the report. There.
Member Farmer.
Thank you. I think that if we really, that the timescale that we're thinking on this in terms of what is a good time, what's not, if we built just before 2020, that would have been great. Just like planting trees 30 years ago would be great, but we don't have that ability to go back. And if we really wanted to be cheaper in the long term, then we would not borrow at all. But that's the balance that we're striking with our ability to, as municipalities, to provide funding for that without there being large spikes in what we're asking for from our own municipalities. Based on the previous conversation, I just also want to highlight that if we are creating a space that more people can access, then we're allowing more people to build relationships with the GSCA, and that there are intangible benefits as we also do things like support the work of the foundation, and that the more people who can come in the doors and be informed and inspired, the more likely we are to also develop revenue in ways that we can't predict right now. I'm supportive of the budget as it is, acknowledging that there's never a good time to ask for money.
Thank you, John. Member Mackey, you have a question?
No, just a comment, Mr. Chair. As Member Gregg was mentioning about historical interest rates, he looked over my way. And I can verify that my first mortgage was 13.75% for 5 years, so 4.2 is a gift. We've had lots of information about it. I'm convinced that the bill committee, has brought it down to a reasonable price. I could say Grey County is building a paramedic base in Durham that's over $3 million. So when you look at the costs here, I think they're very reasonable and now's the time to move it. I've not seen a good time in all my years on council when you want to see anything out of the ordinary, but now's as good as any.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tibbet?
Thank you, Chair. I do want to just, acknowledge staff and the building committee for, being very fiscally responsible of bringing this project together. I think it is, a strong product, at a very good price point, and rates are, very reasonable. What's top of mind for me is momentum risk. I feel that, if we don't push this through this year, you start to lose momentum, things can start to unravel, things start to maybe even start to get a little bit more expensive. And I just feel that, we've just teed everything up so well where we're at, that, it's never a good time. Nobody ever wants, an additional bill to pay. But if we don't move now, I do feel we're going to start to lose momentum and things start to get a little unwieldy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. And Member Axel?
I just have a follow-up.
Sure.
No, Conservation Authority has done an excellent job. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying at our council table, I'm gonna have a hard time pushing this, but I will do it. But I'm just saying that, and I think it's in the best interest of the Conservation Authority. I'm just saying, it's like going into pushing a wet noodle up a hill, but when I go back to our council, that's all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. It's been a very wholesome conversation. I agree. You were Blue Mountains and Beaver. We actually had kind of lighter years last year. Now we're paying the fight for this year. So we also had pretty strong conversations about this. But I think in paper we agree this is something that's important and needs to happen. And I think I'll echo everyone else that I think the GSE has done a great job of getting it in the position it's in now. There will never be a good time. So if there's no other question. I'll give you the last one.
So last year, Georgia Bluffs was one of those ones that I think we started at 30 point something.
Mhm.
So if we all get the years like that. We came in a lot better this year. Is there not something in the Conservation Authorities Act about this bill whereby municipalities have turned it down? Am I wrong in thinking that too?
Yeah, so the way the Conservation Authorities Act reads is this board of directors is the decision maker on apportionment costs. And once this board of directors makes their decision, that cost is apportioned to municipalities as a debt owner. It doesn't go to municipal councils for a decision. What does go to municipal councils for a decision is for them to tell you how to vote. And you as a person, do whether you bring forward the bill council or not. But that is how that works. There's no appeal mechanism. Under the act, the municipality feels they've been unfairly cost. I haven't seen what that process looks like, but I anticipate that it's not a question of we want to pay this or we don't want to pay this, more a question of did the Conservation Authority arrive at this decision fairly? Is it consistent with the act? Yes.
And one final thing, the budget companion that goes with all of this, I think is really excellent. I really like that layout and the ease of being able to read it. And I think for the average person that would take that and read it, it makes a lot of sense for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
And all of it.
So on that, the motion's on the table. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, everyone.
Just that one. Sure. Did we just mention how goal here can be set forward as a debt going? I'm just thinking it flexes every year in proportion in relation to the assessment of each municipality. Does it flex?
Yeah, so the best example to give is that, let's say that we have our levy from 2024. And let's, for argument's sake, say it doesn't change, it doesn't go up at all in 2020. fine. It would change between your municipalities though, because it's based on that modified current value assessment, and as that ratio of current value assessment changes between the municipalities, that number will move.
So it'll flex when the province does a reassessment.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
You're right.
If you had a huge amount of building in certain costs and our assessment went up, then that would take everybody else down.
Yeah, the total package dollar doesn't change. The proportion that it goes to each municipality does. So if one municipality's assessment would way down in a year versus everybody else's, then that's how that's structured.
BB will go down, Chatsworth will go down. St. Bruce is gonna go down. We'll go up, you'll go up, me will go up.
That's what we ever did.
Let Bill-
$5 million houses.
There's a building next door.
That's because of lake.
Okay. John, rescue, let's talk about something other than money. Administration, number 2, water management, the ice management plan information, so take it away.
I can tell you this seat is cool. Let's just see if I can share the screen here. Looking for,
Share.
I did share. See,
While you're doing that, you want to take a quick break?
how am I gonna have it though?
And that's.
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
That's a good question. but-
Everybody's.
I know, we don't matter, we don't know, we don't know the church, is it different with the middle?
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, thank you. We're back. And I'm gonna, John, hopefully you're now set up, ready to go.
Okay, so everybody online can see the presentation? Yeah, we're all good. Would you like me to turn the bank of lights out, or are you good with this? I think,
Seems okay.
okay. So as per, Ontario Regulation 686-21, which is the mandatory programs and services regulation, the province has asked every CA in the province to come up with, different plans and services that they want summarized, but one of them was the ice management plan. So this is something that they want every CA to have by the end of December this year. They didn't give any other directions as to what was in the ice management plan, so we've taken the opportunity to put a bunch of things together in a kind of a format that I could just key into a new staff person and say, here, this will help you understand at least 90% of our problems with the ice management. So that was kind of my goal when I started putting this together. We've always had this information, we just haven't had it in a nice package like this. So, and kudos to the comms department for helping me make this look pretty. They are my photos, but they always do a good job of putting this stuff together. So a brief introduction. Ontario as a whole has a long history of having ice jamming problems. Doesn't matter where you go, somebody's somewhere has got ice jamming issues. Generally, the main cause of it is excessive cool periods or rapid warm periods. So it's always more or less a temperature related issue. But for the most part, there are several factors that can contribute to ice jamming. Velocities is one of them. So if the water channel doesn't have the flow to keep the water, the ice moving, you're definitely going to have ice jamming issues. So it's the same as the traffic jam, things will start to slow down and pile up. So the size of the channel can make a difference, and also the speed of the water. Okay, so the types of ice can contribute to the ice jams. Slush ice, this is one that you don't see very often. It looks like wet cotton batting sheets in the water when the snow's coming down. So a lot of snow coming in a hurry will start to just kind of pile up on top of the water and then slowly sink into it. So not a very common one that you see. It generally doesn't cause ice jamming, but it can contribute to an existing ice jam increase. So it's something that is out there. Frazzle ice, that's the biggie. That's the one that we have an eye out for in almost every municipality. You've all seen it to some degree. Some areas it happens in locations where it can cause flooding and threaten houses. But for frazzle ice to develop, the water needs to be cold and the air needs to be really cold. So a wind chill factor of -18 degrees Celsius, and that mixing with the water creates the ice crystals. And then those ice crystals, they like to stick to each other, they like to stick to their neighbor, they stick to the bottom, they stick to everything that they come in contact with. So they tend to build an ice jam very quickly. So they're definitely something that is challenging to predict, but it is very common. Next page, sorry. There. And sheet ice cover. That's the third type of ice that we encounter. The top picture is some frazzle ice from the Beaver River Talisman. Sheet ice, this is a picture just upstream of the Slabtown Dam on the Beaver River. It's both our friend and our foe. So sheet ice, when it develops, it helps to insulate the water, and then that prevents the frazzle ice from developing. So the protects from the cold air. But then it becomes a problem if we have quick thaw, it's mobilized, and it starts to move downstream, and then it starts to collapse. So it's I like to see when the sheet ice develops, but I don't want to see a lot. I want to see it just couple inches, that's it. And the third, or the third cause of ice development issues in our watersheds and everywhere else is land use. So when watercourses don't have a lot of trees beside them, the trees tend to can insulate the watercourse itself. So you're regulating the temperature, you're regulating the airflow over top of the water. Also, trees, lack of trees, you have the melt starts to happen, and the fields run off quicker and put more water into the water courses, thereby giving you a real flush of water that starts to raise the sheet ice. So having nice tree buffers or forest areas along our waterways, that's very beneficial to preventing sheet ice and frazzle ice. So it's definitely always a challenge. Try to keep that, try to have tree cover. I'm not using the software I'm used to, I'm sorry. And then another thing that can impact on sheet ice development are their dams. So this is the pond that the Bennett Dam creates. So even smaller dams, even Thornbury Dam, if it gets a nice sheet cover on there, again, it's helping to prevent the frazzle ice. In some cases, the sheet ice is able to move beyond the dam during a thaw, so that's a problem downstream. It's very fortunate that our dam is built to actually trap the ice, so that's its whole design. So dams can be very beneficial for controlling ice jams downstream, as long as they're just not in a bad situation where they're to add to the problem. So potential sites within our watershed, we have 4 main sites that we keep an eye on. The Beaver River through Clarksburg, that's probably one that most of you know about. You hear about it often. They tend to have the most struggles with the ice. So if you're looking at the diagram, A is the Clendenin Dam location. The river flows down through Clarksburg and down and heads into the Thornbury Mill Pond, which is at B. The ice tends to start building up at the upstream end of the mill pond and works its way upstream. It can jam all the way up to pretty much the old former Haynes Dam site that we have. So it's definitely a challenge through there. There's a lot of history documentation of it flooding. Traditionally, it was considered ice sheet jams that were happening throughout Clarksburg. That's the purpose of the Bennett Dam. We built that to trap the ice sheet and prevent it from blowing down through Clarksburg. Worked really well for a while, and then we started having some cooler winters, which changed the ice issue down frazzle ice. So frazzle ice can still collect down through Clarksburg and still cause problems. So that's something that both us and the municipality keep an eye on. There's lots of studies to see if there's any way to alleviate those problems. In '97, we did a study for down at Blue Mountains. Did another one in 2005 as a follow-up. They had different recommendations as to what you could try to do, but unfortunately the studies weren't very detailed on actually giving a cost-benefit analysis. So a lot of these recommendations either aren't very practical or they're very expensive. So for now, the town pretty much adopts the management of using a high hole to remove ice at key areas to keep the water moving. So that's pretty much the practice that goes on with that. But to help them out, we do have a water level sensor in the floodplain for Clarksburg. And that will tell us when the water is getting up higher than the channel itself and starting the floodplain, and it also gives us a trending whether it's going up or down. So that really helps them with whether they need to get the equipment out of there because it's going up too high and they need to get it out, or whether it's something that they don't get. So I'm not sure if one of these links will work. Anywhere? I see a really nice chart, but you're not seeing it. so.
You could, if you want to stop sharing and then reshare the chart, you could, John.
Okay. Everyone else has the project on their computers, they can open up the links. The web link to the webcam right now for the Vanetta Dam, it's cellularly challenged, so it's only getting a picture out about every once a week right now. In the wintertime, it's a little better, but the chart updates every 2 hours. Okay, Big Head River, similar thing, the sheet ice is their main issue, and it's usually in the inner harbor area here where they have a 90-degree turn. That 90-degree turn is basically the ice convey through the bridge. And they can have ice jamming upstream even further, but it's not as common as the inner harbor area. More or less, there's been a few studies done down there, but it's mostly for the floodplain delineation. And for the most part, we've heard, they employ their own high-ho equipment to keep the channel clear and flowing through the inner harbor. So that's worked well for them. We haven't had a really serious ice jam down there for some time now. And we do have a monitoring water level sensor down there. And the same idea as the Clarksburg one, it sends out data every 2 hours and updates the chart. You can check that chart out online. That chart's actually available to anybody through our website. Sauble River in Allenford. So here's Allenford, and then as we flow downstream to this side of 25 Bridge, this is where the ice collects, and then it will start backing up into the town of Leaford or Allenford, and there's a lot of flooding can happen. So the municipality again would employ a high-ho to clear the ice at the bridge and try to keep it moving. And there's also a water level sensor at the top end. Here's a picture of an actual ice jam happening in, that was 2009. This from the bridge downstream. So again, there's a chart online and also a webcam that we can visually see if there's any ice jamming throughout the town. And Sauble River, this one doesn't happen very often. Essentially in the Invermay area, just upstream of this bridge, ice can collect there. There's a lot of quiet water before you get to that bridge, and get some very good ice covers. So that can move during a sudden thaw. It's usually a fairly significant thaw. And same idea with that one. There is a water level sensor at that bridge location, as well as a webcam that's facing the bridge, so we can see if there's any issues happening. So that's pretty much it. Our main role with ice, we do monitoring for the ice. We monitor the weather. We try to communicate with the municipality as to whether or not we think they should be keeping an eye on it. Occasionally go over the sites too and check out how things are flowing and moving along. It's a partnership that way. These are all more or less site specific problems. So it's not something that will trigger an overall flood warning type thing. So we can issue one like for Allenford if we're thinking something's going to happen there. But it's very site specific.
Thank you, John. Does anybody have any questions? And we're next one.
Sure. John, since we've been dropping the water levels at the Thornbury Dam, I guess the end of our dam, has there been enough time for you to see if there's any great benefit to the dropping that?
I'm familiar with the project that you're talking about. So at the Thornbury Dam, they're lowering the winter water levels there to try to change the point where the pond backs to the streams, changing that area that might collect ice. The struggle right now is Fletchburg had a couple of really bad years in a row, frazzle ice and then some flooding that happened. And we haven't had a really bad frazzle ice season since. So you've been doing that stuff with the dam, but you haven't had a good test of it. So it's really hard to do kind of an evaluation of that. Is that?
Go ahead, a follow. Okay, thank you. So, John, are you gonna make a recommendation to our municipality then that we have an excavator available? Because we haven't had one for a couple of years. An excavator that's got the capacity to do that again.
So that's, if I may, that's the town's call. So if they suspect they're gonna have frazzle ice issues, they get a high quote from there ahead of time.
Okay.
So they're always ready. You got great staff that are really experienced with their ice problem. So normally, I might send out something as a reminder, this is frazzle ice, the forecast that's coming, there's strong potential for frazzle ice, but in your scenario, it all depends on the flows of the rivers. High flows tend to have the same frazzle ice problem. So there's a lot of variables that your guys are good. They're on.
Okay.
Member Shell?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, John. My question is kind of as our winters, I guess, get warmer, what my understanding is frazzle ice becomes more of a problem, but I just wondered if you could comment on that and what you're anticipating, the ice, how ice management practices may need to change over the next, say, 10 years.
Yeah, so as our winters, basically they don't get as cold as they used to. So the frazzle ice issues are much less frequent. And we're not getting the same sheet ice development that we used to get. So from an ice flooding scenario, we're better off right now than what we used to be. But if we have a cold winter, and it's followed up with warm spell with a lot of rain and snow melt, then we're in trouble with it in some spots. So it's always something to watch out for. When I see that sheet ice gone in the spring, extremely happy. So that's usually the biggest concern I have. Does that help answer?
I think so. So basically this is going to continue to be a concern, so long as we have kind of erratic swings, which I think is what we're likely going to see.
Yes, erratic swings, even with snow cover. That's always the scary part because the ground's frozen when perhaps early thaws. Everything flows so quickly. So long cold winters, they create a problem in the spring. Winter like last year where we had a little bit of cold, a little bit of warm. That was a very relaxing spring for me. So we're still highly variable in the sun range of temperatures we've seen in the beginning. So every year's a year. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Member Dave?
Thank you for your presentation. I always enjoy just nature I'm less familiar with. I'm curious about page 4 of the report in terms of land development. There's a little section there that talks about urban development, land drainage, and deforestation that all accelerate the rate of work. And I'm wondering, like, I know that you can see all the connections between those uses of land and what happens with the rivers and creeks and streams. And I'm sure people are in the table can with their background expertise as well. And it sounds like the municipal staff have they can pay attention to the urgent nature of ice jams. Do you feel like this section could be leveraged more to help educate even more people about the relationship between ice and drainage and the other aspects of erosion, which you've seen before at other meetings?
yeah. So that's not just unique to the ice jam
Yeah.
issue. That's unique to flooding So the faster we get water to the system. So part of our education is through the report card process. We do score the amount of forest cover next to the river systems. So there's an indicator there that says whether or not you're doing well or not, or within your watershed. So that's part education. We try to pre-plan, try to talk to them. So here's a priority if we're at the site, say, let's get trees on the stream. All of our volunteer groups are all looking at trees on the stream. It's kind of, that's probably one of the oldest things that have been pushed for years. This is the one thing that you need to do, is get trees on the streams. We're just so slow at getting it. It's just, you can't force people.
You still have to cover, I'll do one more, but
Thank you, sir. Okay. Yeah. John, only because it's interconnected to the downstream. I'm wondering, and I don't want to trip into Nadia's territory here too much, because she's going there, but is Genie Lake? I'm not sure if the Conservation Authority can have any influence on lowering the levels in Genie Lake to help mitigate ice downstream at Clarksburg, but that would be a nice conversation if we could do that.
Yeah, Eugenia Lake's operated by Ontario Power Generation. If we had, we do have frazzle lights down to Talisman. And if we were to contact them and say, hey, we're having frazzle lights, don't flush more water down. That's the exact opposite of what they would do in the river system. So their response to frazzle lights is to flush more water down. So there's still an education there to make sure that they're not doing something that's the system really can't handle at the time. But they usually communicate very well with us. If they're east water, I've never gone to them to release more water. That's a little more involved for them. They have to to actually do that too. So they're working within a plan for water level. So it's but yes, we do communicate very well.
okay. So I will move that the Board of Directors receive report 045-2024 Ice Management Plan as information. May I have a move and second, please? Okay, Member Maxwell, all in favor? As carried, and thank you very much. Moving on to the presentation or the issue, so Margaret, I believe, is next. Sorry, I should just mention that there was nothing to report this time. Point 3 environmental planning and point 4 operations. So this is conservation land strategy plan resolution.
And good afternoon, Chair and Directors. So at the October meeting, very recently, you considered the draft conservation area strategy. And following that, the draft was shared for public consultation. We received 4 responses, and upon reviewing them, we did not find any need to change the bulk of the strategy, though we did summarize those responses therein. Our other changes since October include an update to map 2, which was just a result of the Discovery Biosphere Conservancy and the Bruce Trail Conservancy sharing their most recent data so that their most recent land acquisitions are included in the integration considerations, and a concluding section that confirms the direction and the objectives of the strategy. So here for any questions, but otherwise we're seeking.
Thank you. So I will table that, whereas Ontario Regulation 686/21 mandatory programs and services regulation requires a conservation authority to prepare a conservation area strategy on or before December 31st, 2024. And whereas GSTA developed a draft strategy and circulated it for consultation and has incorporated the findings into a final report, that the GSTA Board of Directors approved the conservation area strategy. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? And Member Gregg and Member Farmer. Thank you. Any questions or comments from
Just a quick comment, and thank you for those who worked on this document that was needed so quickly. I was happy to see the quantitative data. I would be interested in future, like, reports back from the public. There's some qualitative data where they respond in a sentence or paragraph that gets cut off when information is presented. So I'd be interested in reading, having access to what's in the future, but there are not very many.
Anyone else? Not seeing anything, I'll call the vote, all in favor. And that is carried, thank you. Moving on to conservation land point B, Old Falls parking. Resolution attachment 15 in your package, and I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some board members will be familiar with the Old Baldy property parking situation because it has come before the board previously. But I'll give a quick background. So the Old Baldy Conservation Area, if you're not familiar, is in the municipality of Grey Highlands, adjacent to the village of Kimberley or the hamlet of Kimberley in the Beaver Valley. Grey Sauble has owned this particular portion of the property since 1965. We purchased it to facilitate public access to the property and the trails. We constructed a parking area in 1967. And then over the preceding year, the following years, we did face a number of legal issues with that parking lot that were addressed throughout the 90s. And then in the late 90s, with the assistance of the township of Euphrasia at the time, it was pre-amalgamation, that parking area was expanded to better facilitate access to the property. And then in 2020, jumping ahead, a couple decades there, our staff received some complaints from an adjacent landowner about people parking on the property overnight. And to provide some frame of reference, Conservation Authorities Act does not permit at face value accessing a conservation area between dusk and dawn without a permit from the Conservation Authority. So at that point, our staff reached out to these landowners, had a discussion with them, learned that they had been parking there for a long time, and we do have some very limited information in our own files to suggest that is true. At that time, we came forward to the board of directors to implement both the need for an agreement to allow these people, these adjacent landowners, to park at the property and to charge a fee for doing so of $5. And so, I guess I neglected to mention, there are 6 or 7 adjacent property owners on an unmaintained road, a road that's unmaintained in the winter because it's not feasible to plow up and down the road due to the steepness and the bending nature of the road. And so the neighbors at those adjacent properties have been using the Old Baldy parking lot as their area for their cars during the winter. So, as I mentioned, we came forward to the board approved a motion to strike agreements with these landowners and to charge a $500 per year fee to allow them to park there outside of typical operating hours. We did receive pushback from the landowners at that time. In the first year, most of the neighbors signed the agreement, paid the fee. In the second year, the neighbors brought this forward to the municipality of Grey Highlands, and the municipality paid the fee on behalf of the neighbors. In the third year, there was confusion as to who was going to pay because the municipality had apparently only agreed to do it for 1 year, so we actually didn't get paid at all. And most recently, this has become a contentious issue for council and for the municipality of Grey Highlands. And so because of that, council at Grey Highlands has directed their staff to reach out to us and to you as the board to request that parking fees are eliminated there and that people that have cottages or rather houses adjacent to the property are allowed to park at the Old Baldy parking lot. The letter from the municipality is included in the board package for your review. So staff have considered this. We've looked through our files to see sort of the backstory on the property, and we've come forward with 4 options for the board to consider. One would be to waive the fee that we currently have direction from the board to charge, but still to require agreement. I think that an agreement is important for our own liability. If we can park in the winter, in the dark, on the Conservation Authority's property. And then the board would have to consider, is this carte blanche for as many cars as each individual wants, or is there a limitation on how many cars could be parked there per household? And who those would belong to. Option number 2 is to waive the parking fee, but still require the not-for-profit admin fee from our fee schedule of $100. So if we were to rent a piece of property for a school group to come in, for instance, we would charge a $100 administration fee to put that together. So option number 2 would include that fee to coordinate. Option 3 would be to waive the special parking fee, but require individuals to purchase the regular members pass that allows people any of our paid parking lots with an agreement that specifically allows these individuals to park there overnight. And the issue of how many cars would be just subject to how many passes they purchase. And option 4 is to continue with the current arrangement of $500 per week. And I would note that we received some last minute correspondence. I received it Monday morning from one of the residents suggesting that the agreement should be between the municipality and the Conservation Authority as opposed to between the individuals and the Conservation Authority. I don't agree with this simply because, I face value agreement that if the municipality chooses to absolve the Conservation Authority of any and all liability and assume all liability of individuals, property, and any damage that cost. I'm surprised if the municipality would assume that. That's my take on it. I would anticipate that Member Vivek may have comments. And but with that, through Mr. Chair, I would open discussion to the board.
Sure, I'll not read the motion because it requires a specific option, but I will. John, you had your hand up first.
Thank you. Thank you. Just requesting some background for those of us who weren't here. Why was the rate set at $500 originally? And were there any requirements or specifications around number of vehicles to be included at that time?
Thank you for that. $500 was chosen because that is a rate that we have used with other individuals who are using our property for personal use. So we've had individuals that request access to, say, the example I'm going to use is one property that wanted to run a drainage pipe from their footing drains across our property to a stream, and we struck an agreement with them and charged them a rate of $500 per year. Beyond that, it's quasi-arbitrary. We have a $100 administration fee for signing agreement for nonprofits, a $200 administrative fee for signing agreements with for-profits. And this was deemed by the board to be something that was being gained by these 6 or 7 individual households that was not of equal benefit to the remainder of the public. So I don't have a perfect answer on the specific number that was chosen, except that that's a number that we've used in other instances.
And just through the chair, of another question, is there anything other than the idea that people were parking here before that would entitle the neighbors on a section of road that the municipality is not maintaining access to this gray Sauble property? It strikes me as kind of a squatter's rights kind of argument, not knowing of anyone else who just gets access to property outside of the parameters of that property use, just because.
So anecdotally, we've been told that when the Township of Euphrasia assisted the Conservation Authority with expanding the parking lot, that a handshake agreement was struck at that time that those residents would be able to park at this parking lot. I don't have anything in our files that suggests that. What I do have in our files for sure is I was only one sentence I was able to find suggesting that these landowners had been parking there even prior to that. and one sentence that suggested that the township administration did in fact assist with the construction of the park. But beyond that, I don't have anything in our files to suggest that, but we anecdotally have heard that was part of the rationale.
Member Carl.
So I have two questions on this, and you might have sort of answered the first one. The former township of Euphrasia allowed development on an unopened, unmaintained road, but didn't put anything in place for how people would access that year round. So were these originally, I'm thinking like, if we allow somebody to build on an unopened road now, there's a no maintenance agreement signed where they have to keep that road open, we don't. So that's why I'm questioning there, or were these not year-round properties at that time? Were defined as seasonal? And the second part of that would be, who keeps this parking lot cleared out so that they can park there?
So I can't answer the first part of your question because I don't know. The municipality definitely is the one that clears the park. So they use the parking lot as a turnaround for the plow. The roadway that leads into the old Baldy parking lot was, from the time we purchased it up until about 2 or 3 years ago, privately owned. Sauble had an easement right of way over that. 2 or 3 years ago, the municipality of Great Islands purchased that roadway. And so now that's a municipal roadway. They did.
Well, just to follow up on, typically, here, unless they bring, unless the residents want to bring the road up to the municipal standard. That being said, nobody that lives in the country that I'm aware of doesn't have snow removal costs. I think we should go continue with, what we agreed to before and go with option 4. It's not our responsibility to be that revenue. If the municipality wants to look after those residents and let them park for nothing, for any snow removal costs, that's up to Great Island, but it shouldn't be.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Dubé.
Hi there. It's a little bit difficult to hear Member Mackey. Member Mackey, did you state that, I just want to be clear, did you just state that you're in support of option 4? In terms of like,
Yes, I'm in support of option 4 and Great Island should pay.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just maybe provide it just a little bit of context as well. I think so. Thank you very much for the Grace Sauble staff for bringing together this report. I think it's very comprehensive and has shed a few more facts than what we had served at council. So thank you for looking through all your files for this. So since I have been a councillor for 2 years. This is one of the first items that did come to council in terms of a delegation, and so this conversation has been happening for some time. I would say the reason why council felt that maybe we should step away from the, say, call it the 500 price point to either allowing it for free or even, maybe even possibly the, a seasonal pass is, historically it has been used, as a parking spot for those residents. Gorey Highlands did help to expand the parking space, and also that, that Gorey Highlands also plows that parking space during the winter time. So, it's a bit of a, call it a bit of a partnership there. So, given that there was, council felt that there was, a case to be made to, step away from the $500 mark and potentially provided either for free or, at a nominal price.
Everybody?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I fail to understand if the unmaintained road is plowed by the municipality, then each of these homeowners should have a laneway and should be able to park in their own laneway, the same as you were right. Cost me money to keep my laneway. Why don't they pay it?
So there's two different roadways. So the one roadway that the municipality plows rather is the one that they just acquired and was previously a right of way. That's at the top of the escarpment. The side road 7A, I believe it is, goes down the escarpment, and that's the section that leads individual houses that's not maintained by the municipality. Can't run, just for clarification.
Member Maxwell.
Sure. So is there any opportunity for these discussions, therefore, some kind of a partner or a compromise between all three parties? So Gray Sauble, Gray Highlands, and the owners of the property. And we would do, say, MOU, Gray Highlands, where we have to have all the additional insured people. And Gray Highlands looks after whatever they do with the maintenance of the parking lot, but we split the revenue stream.
Yeah, I suppose there's any number of options.
Sure. Member Farmer first.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm curious, with the municipal plowing of the lot, is the it seems like the argument from Grey Highlands Council is that we're doing this for you, so you should let these residents use that. But is there a formal agreement that lays out why they're plowing that and what they get for that? Or is that also a convenience piece of, if you don't turn around in this lot, you can't turn around to plow?
I'm not aware of any agreement, and I do believe it would be difficult to turn around and plow without the space.
Member Davis, nobody first, she didn't head up first.
I just want to touch back on something Member Dubik mentioned earlier, or Vice Chair Dubik mentioned earlier about historical use of land as an argument for continued use of being able to do something. It made me think of the Glen, which I know from accessing that area when I was in high school, that people historically have camped there, and accessing that area over the last few years, people are still camping there sometimes. That historical use doesn't mean that we should start permitting camping, overnight camping in Glen. So I'm just wary of using historical use of a property as a justification for doing for permitting anything. I think it's a can of worms that we may want to be wary of. If there is a mutual benefit to us where the parking lot is being plowed, so people are able to access the Conservation Authority in the winter, that feels more like something that would be a good negotiating topic from my perspective.
Okay, Vice Chair Dubik.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I left my hand raised, but just a quick comment just to that historical piece. There was apparently, we got some background information from a prior mayor that there was that handshake agreement in terms of, we'll expand the parking lot, if you allow usage. And so, there's no agreement in writing. It was more of a handshake back in those days.
Member Greg, you still have a?
Well, I've just been interested in listening to everyone's comments because I was part of the discussion a few years ago on this. I'm in favor of charging a fee. I'm not certain exactly what the fee is, but there is a legal rule that plays into the conversation here. And I am largely in agreement with Director Mackey, that if you hire someone to plow your driveway, they're not likely going to do it for free. It's a cost that is the norm to have soil removal for the convenience of parking. Things have changed. I understand there's an old handshake agreement, but as this was muddier a few years ago because the municipality did not own the roadway. I don't think that Grey Highlands as of yet can even drive that maintains fire service to those houses in the winter. That's how difficult that road is. But, you know, I'm supportive of applying a fee. And I've been just, you know, entertaining the discussion of the comments from how you perceive it now, because it was a little different a few years ago when the easement was in place. And now the roadways are way great, so things have changed a little bit.
Just for the record, I haven't read the motion yet, but we do technically have a suggestion for option 4 on the table by Member Mackey. So we're basing this on the conversation right now that option 4 is basically going to be put on the table. So Member Farmer.
Thank you to staff. Would this parking lot be open if in the winter if the municipality was not plowing it, knowing that several GSCA properties, we just put, like, I'm thinking of Ainsley Woods, we just put the gate up and say, walk in if you're going to use it, park somewhere else. Would this be open otherwise?
Gray Sauble would not be plowing this part.
Member Shaw.
So, similar sentiments as some of the other members. I think there needs to be a fee for the reasons stated. I also, I think coming back to some of the question raised and some of the options around like how many cars, I think no matter what I would think we would want to know that. I don't know if, you know, if it's the parking pass and that's issued per license plate or something, but I just can't see how there wouldn't be, like, there's going to be a cost to do this no matter what. So I think I think there has to be some sort of fee as well. I can appreciate the handshake agreement and not having all that history. So I think as well, whatever we decide today, we probably need to have some sort of MOU or something in place going forward, so that it clarifies for the future.
Thank you, Jen.
Sorry, I'm just curious, is there a time of day then that residents have to have vehicles out of that parking lot to facilitate the plow coming in?
I don't know the logistics of that.
Like, how do you clear the whole parking lot if?
Yeah, I was hoping Vice Chair Dubik's hand would pop up out of nowhere there, and
Yep.
it did.
Yeah, so usually the plows can figure it out. I've asked that question as well. So they will plow around cars, and then usually, you know, cars move around, and then they'll you know, clean it up as needed. So it does get cleared out. Apparently they know what they're doing, and it does get cleared out over time as cars move around.
Okay, this is very good. I'll give the last word to Member Nate.
For a memorandum of understanding, I feel a little bit wary of making one that would be ongoing in perpetuity. I feel like there would need to be some sort of, we'll revisit this. If there's a property owner who likes hosting winter parties and has many cars, like if something changes about how those properties are used, I just feel like there should be flexibility built into it somehow.
So I think
So just for clarity, we wouldn't strike it here for longer than 5 years.
Okay, I'm going to read the motion, putting option 4 in, let's take a vote and see exactly where we sit. Whereas the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority is the fee simple owner of the land known as Old Baldy Conservation Area in Old Baldy in the municipality of Grey Highland. And whereas several property owners have a vested interest in securing a parking arrangement on GSCA's Old Baldy property to accommodate parking for their personal residences. And whereas under section 21, bracket 1, bracket N of the Conservation Authorities Act, GSCA may enter into agreements with individuals, that the board of directors directs staff to proceed with option 4 and to notify the municipality and local residents of this decision. So a mover, technically option 4, Member Mackey, and a seconder, Member Durst. I will call the vote. All in favor? Is that?
Right, yep.
Okay, that is carried.
There is still the issue there, though. Are you making that agreement with each individual property owner, and how does that carry forward when a property sells?
We would try to with each individual property, state the agreement that which is very forward, that a property owner will take summers. It's typically how we structure.
Yeah, you'd have to make sure that they knew enough to tell real estate agent or whoever that this needs to be looked after.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, members. I will notify the municipality and I will notify the residents.
Yeah. Thank you. And moving on to forestry. Boardhouse 190 MA hardwood timber resolution. Cam will speak to this. Member Shaw, do you still have a question or comment while they're setting up?
Yes, I have another meeting at 4 I actually have to go to, so I just wanted you to be aware that I'm probably going to have to leave here shortly.
Thank you.
John started in your.
Okay, so just a couple of quick things to run through here for the forestry. We had a tender out and just closed yesterday at 4 o'clock. So the particular area here is the Woodhouse, part of the Woodhouse management area, just south of Rockland on the 7th line. We as you can see on the screen there, a summary of what we marked. And so there was 150,000 board feet, 150,798 board feet of saw logs marked and 35 cords of fuel wood across 90 acres. We received 3 bids for the tendered amount, and the 3 bids are listed there. We got a good bid from Vester Forest Products for $247,077 for that timber, which was quite a bit above our internal estimate of what we would get for that property. So we were quite happy with that bid, and the recommendation there suggests that we would award the tender to Vester Forest Products for the $247,077, subject to signing. Thank you, Ken. I'll just put that on the table. Whereas the Gray Sauble Conservation Authority owns and manages over 11,300 hectares, 28,000 acres of land comprised of 207 individual properties organized into 79 groupings. And whereas GSCA manages nearly 5,260 hectares or 13,000 acres of forested area to offset the operating expenses of the forestry department and GSCA, that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors award the following forestry tender: sawlog and fuel wood tender GSC-24-01 for Woodhouse Management Area, Compartment 190, to Bester Forest Products for their total bid of $247,000, $247,077, subject to signing the agreement. Second, please. Member Harris. For Carlton. Any discussion?
I just have a quick question.
Member,
Just so I, geographically, is that in Bickford or Great Highlands?
Great Highlands. We're still getting. Any other questions? Seeing nothing, I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. And B, exception to wood products tendering policy, the resolution, attachment 17 in your packet.
Okay, so yes, number two, just quickly here, what we have is, or what we're looking for is an exception to our wood products tendering policy. So our wood products tendering policy says that tenders with an estimated value over $10,000 must go to a tender process such as the one we just went through. Tenders with an estimated value under $10,000 can be sold through a request for quotation process. So in that process, we can approach two or more contractors and negotiate a sale directly with them. And then we would bring that information forward to the board for information. It would be approved by the forestry coordinator and CAO, the staff. So in this particular instance, we have a stand of timber that we have harvested before, and it's inaccessible through any sort of normal routes. So we have had to access the property in the past through a private landowner to the south. And we had, the property has changed hands since the last time it was harvested in 2007. But we tried to negotiate or get a hold of the people to access the property and were not successful. So I approached the local logger who lives in the area and just happens to know these people. And he was able to get a hold of them and negotiate access on our behalf to this stand. So we're requesting the exemption that we could sell directly to this contractor because we have the access through his the work that he's done. So we would go through our normal process of marking the timber and calculating a volume, and then we would negotiate a sale price with that contractor. So the recommendation there is that we authorize an exception to the wood products tendering policy to allow staff to do a direct sale for this particular stand.
Thank you, Cam, and to clarify that, whereas GSCA maintains a wood products tendering policy, which provides direction to staff about the sale of wood products from GSCA lands, and whereas stand 8 at this Little Germany property, compartment 90, property location dash lots 38, 39, and 40, in concession 14, municipality of Grey Highlands, former Artemisia Township, was scheduled for harvest in 2022. That the board of directors authorize an exception to the wood product tendering policy to allow staff to engage in a direct sale of standing timber. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Member Gray and Member Farmer, thank you. Any questions for Member Gray?
Quick question just regarding any ash, whether there's any value in there that you can mark up and realize additional removal on those trees at this time.
There is a little bit of ash there and we will definitely be looking at capturing that.
Not seeing anything else, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you. Final point, communication, public relation, education, GIS, DWSP. There is nothing to report at this time. So we will move to the CAO's report.
Mr. Chair, I'll try to be quick. Let's get the material then. So over the last month or so since our last meeting, as you know, I've been talking to your council, so I've been out to 7 of the 8 municipal councils. Gloria Dangerfield, who's walking around us right now, will be going down to Secret Highlands on December 18th because I think it's time. We've already discussed how that went and where we're at. Some other things that have happened over the month is our Indigenous Relationships Committee met on October 29th. The things that were discussed were a potential memorandum of understanding with the Métis Nation of Ontario, the potential for interpretive and/or Indigenous displays in the lobby of our renovated office building, as well as some discussion on the need for and the function of the committee. There's nothing to report at this time. That last item, though, is one thing that through our strategic plan, we're looking at as an organization, as a team here, is which committees do we need, what's their function and purpose, and essentially do they need to carry forward or are there some that are missing? So started that conversation. The executive, as it were, we don't have a formal executive, but the executive of our board, so the chair, the vice chair, as well as our finance manager, Alison Armstrong, and myself, met with the executive from the Sauble Conservation Foundation earlier this month at the end of October. And the executive of the foundation expressed interest in dissolving the foundation based on the fact that they are finding it hard to meet the objectives that they set for themselves. So at the meeting, from the Sauble side, we raised some concerns with this and raised some other options that we would like the foundation to consider as opposed to dissolution, because it may be that the individual members are choosing not to carry on, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they should dissolve. So I'm planning to attend the next meeting of the foundation. It's supposed to be last week, but it's been rescheduled, so I think it's going to be next week. We'll try to keep the door open on that, and we'll provide more information to the board as things progress. On Remembrance Day, Margaret Potter, Victor Rosell, and myself were down at Eugenia Falls for the soft launch unveiling of the work that's been done on the cenotaph at Eugenia Falls. And Member Dubik, or Vice Chair Dubik, was there as well. I believe that the work that's been done there has been very well received by the community. It doesn't look like a lot right now. It looks much tidier, but being November, it doesn't look like a lot right now, but certainly it's going to be amazing when the plants come up in the spring. There's been a ton of community support and engagement and involvement in this. And again, I'd like to thank Margaret on that. It's been quite a lot of work. I think it was a hugely successful project. We also had one of our funding partners, Community Foundation, Grey Bruce, there as well. So great to see them out. Drinking Water Source Protection Committee, or the Source Protection Committee, had a meeting on November 15th. This is one of the regularly scheduled meetings for the year. Of note, though, is they discussed options stemming from their previous Source Protection Committee meeting where they had a delegation from residents in the northern portion of Georgia Bluffs near Zion Church Road about water quality concerns in private drinking water wells. That was brought forward to the Source Protection Committee. The Source Protection Committee at this most recent meeting, staff noted that they've reached out to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to get direction on this. Currently, the terms of reference of the Source Protection Plan deal with municipal drinking water systems. There is an opportunity for the municipality to decide on something that's expanded into a cluster of wells. Not sure how the municipality would do that, like how you would manage individual private well. But it would require amendments to the terms of reference. Several years worth of studies, technical studies initiated by the municipality with full consultation for all stakeholders in the region. And given these concerns and the challenges of the municipality actually doing them, the recommendation at this point for the Source Protection Committee is that our team continue to work with the municipality, agricultural producers and residents to promote best practices for karst across the entire watershed, just in this area. And that is, Mr. Chair, if the board does have any questions or clarification needed on any of those things, have to.
So there's a member back. Yes, thank you, Chair. And to the CEO. So how many private, how many homeowners can be connected to one water source? And not be classified as a municipal jurisdiction?
I don't. Yeah, Carl, our commercial protection lead could answer that. I'm not sure that's not the situation in this instance. So,
What is it?
no, these are individual private wells.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking of private wells, but just wondering how many, if they're connected, then the municipality has to become involved under the city water drinking act.
I don't know the answer.
Okay. Anyone else have anything for Tim? Seeing nothing, I'm just gonna quickly say that we're not finished, we're going to get to close session shortly. But I'm just gonna say technically, as we're not having a December meeting, this is the final GSCA board meeting for 2024. We'll of course be getting together for the Christmas luncheon and now perhaps even a very short meeting in there. But I wanted to take the opportunity to officially thank everyone for their service to the organization and for the opportunity to serve as chair. It's been a rewarding experience that's made easy by the participation and professionalism of the members and the amazing work and support from all the GSCA staff. And as someone who grew up in the area, I've learned a lot more about our region and have a greater appreciation for the challenges that this project faces. Thank you in particular to Vice Chair Dubik for standing in for me on occasions I was unable to attend, and CAO Lantier for always calm, able, and steady leadership. I don't know what's going to happen in 2025, but it's been my pleasure to sit in this seat with you all. Thank you. So, yes. Moving on, we're just going to move into closed session. So I move that the GSTA Board of Directors now move into closed session to consider 1, minutes of the closed session of the regular Board of Directors meeting held on August 28, 2024. 2, and your agenda is not required. So 3, the CAO performance review closed as it relates to personal matters of unidentifiable individual, including authority directors or authority employees. GSCA Administrative Bylaw Section 4, XBII, bracket B. And further that CAO Jim Lantier, Administrative Assistant Valerie Coleman will be